All right, let's have a conversation on career planning in 2022. What lessons can we learn from the prior year, 2021, to be better poised for 2022? And, for our careers, what's the role of business to better support their employees in the face of uncertainty? Joining us from Johannesburg, Vumile Msweli, CEO of Hesed Consulting, also an award-winning career coach. Good afternoon to you, Vumile. Thank you so much for joining us. So what are the trends to be aware of from the past year that just concluded, 2021?
Good afternoon to your viewers, Rotus. So some of the trends that we are seeing is a massive shift around value asset creation. What do I mean by this? So we're seeing organizations let go of their land and buildings. So we're seeing a massive trend where what used to be our organizational buildings across the globe are now being converted into residential areas. Meaning if we cannot articulate the value that you're actually bringing as an asset, you potentially as an employee may lose your spot. So gone are the days where, oh no, so-and-so's been here for 100 years. They know everything in the business, but if they're not adding that value, they will become redundant like land and buildings are now, where organizations will simply let go of you as an employee.
And so what can one implement in 2022 to be better suited to this new way of work?
So for me, it's actually diversify your expertise and exposure. So currently, if you are based in Abuja or you're based in Lagos, are you giving yourself exposure to what's happening in other industries across the globe? What do I mean by this? Are you getting on projects in Kenya? Are you exposing yourself to projects happening in Malaysia? Are you exposing yourself to projects happening here in South Africa? The more you can expose yourself in order to bring in best global practice to your current employer, the more valuable you will be perceived. And the chance of you being perceived as redundant dramatically reduces.
What about career reviews? How does one conduct a career review, Vumile?
So those should be happening for me, not just on an annual basis when you're having your key performance indicator conversation with your current employer, but you should be conducting these on a minimum quarterly basis, preferably on a monthly basis. Touch base with your current employer as well as senior leadership to find out what their strategies are. Where does your career plug into supporting these strategies? You might have a skill set that's going to be redundant in a year's time, but if you're not having those key conversations to know that they're going to be redundant, you won't even know this. This will also help you reposition yourself from a career perspective. It will also help you be able to add value from an academic and skills perspective by upskilling yourself to acquire the skills necessary that will remain relevant in the future for your employer.
Great stuff. So as far as benefits of a career review are concerned, it's mainly on upskilling, or are there any other benefits besides that?
It's also being able to add value to the current corporate landscape. So if you're able to do a review and you can see where the landscape is going, all of us are talking about digitization, Web 3.0, the metaverse, all these things, all these buzzwords are being thrown around. And if you cannot see where you're going to be able to add value in the future, those skills are going to be redundant. So for me, you're able to see where the landscape is and where the future of your current industry is going. You're going to be able to all of a sudden become someone who stands out in your organization as opposed to somebody who's just around for the ride.
Okay, so that's on the employee side. On the employer side, should organizations review their key performance indicators in light of the changing landscape of work?
Yes, so typically in an organization, those KPIs are determined initially at the beginning of the year or during your financial year end. This has to be done on a more frequent basis. We don't have the luxury as business owners and as business to wait in a year's time to see if someone is performing or not. I'm of the opinion that from a business perspective, this should be happening on a quarterly basis. And let's be honest, if someone is being heavy on the boat, you're going to have to toss them out. If you can get resources at a more affordable rate that add greater value, that better position you in your industry, and of course, really drive that revenue, for me, that should be a discussion happening on a quarterly basis amongst leadership teams within business.
And do you think the trends we've seen in 2021, will those carry over and be entrenched further in this new year?
Definitely. The slimlining of organizations getting a lot more agile is going to continue from a human capital perspective, also from an asset perspective. I mentioned land and buildings now being redundant and actually going from being a key asset to now being a revenue generator. We anticipate that those trends are going to continue. Trends around acquiring business, of course, within the legislative framework of people across the globe. I anticipate that those, of course, are going to continue. And then the biggest one is people who are traditionally not your competitors becoming your competitors. We've seen the likes of Facebook changing to Meta in order to be a little bit more agile, because they're realizing that the data that they've been able to mine, etc., is now going to be a little bit more restricted. So they're not even worried about what's going to happen in the next 3 to 5 years, but they're already looking at that 5-year plus. What does this mean for your organization? So if you're the likes of an architect firm, what does this mean in a reality where people are not going to be in buildings anymore? How can you start playing in that digital space?
Vumile Msweli, CEO, Hesed Consulting, career coach. Thank you so much for taking us through career trends for 2022.